No, I'll introduce you, Marilyn. Marilyn Knight gave us a wonderful presentation back in the fall of 2019. It seems like yesterday, but it was a while ago. And she discussed tiny flowers of the hill country and had wonderful photographs. And we had planned a spring presentation by her, but we had to cancel that because of COVID. So now we are so delighted to have her presenting today. Marilyn is a marriage and family therapist. She moved to the hill country in 2000 with her husband. Growing up in Texas, her mother instilled in her a love of plants and animals. And she became a master naturalist in 2007. And her focus was in photographing the wildflowers in the hill country. Besides growing up in Texas, she's lived in Western New Mexico, spent 11 years in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and 6 years in Central Tennessee before coming back to Texas and moving to the hill country. So her presentation today is DLC, the darn yellow composites. You know, we talk about all those little yellow flowers. Well, she's going to help to give us some secrets to identifying them and explain more about them. So take it away, Marilyn.
Well, thank you for inviting me. Can you everybody hear me okay? Yes, and it was been what, a year that it took us to get back to this corner of the world. So everybody always talks about these and that they're really, really hard to understand. There's a lot of stuff here that Sandra just said, so I'm going to skip through it. But I don't know, I find them fairly simple, most of them, to tell. And so I'm going to give you a lot of hints. I went about identifying flowers backwards. I started out with my common names, the names my mother told me, and what I would find in the different books. And then after I started Master Naturalist, I started including the genus with it, and eventually got so I could recognize that. And then just in the last 4 or 5 years, I started organizing my pictures and my lists by family. So I just do things backwards than other people. This is what she said already. I am not an expert, and I'm just gathering knowledge from lots of books and Master Naturalists. And then I am in some Facebook groups that help me identify flowers too. Just as disclaimer, scientific studies are using DNA to identify plant families, and they continue to make names as they discover more stuff. Science is always an evolving thing anyway. And so I try to keep up, but don't always make it. My main sources for flower identification are the websites of the Native Plant Database from Lady Bird Nature Center and the USDA plant data, and my truly expert friends on the Facebook groups I'm in. So why do we use scientific names and when we have all these wonderful things? We have a sunflower here. Well, the thing is that common names, as we have already mentioned. Let me see if I can get my face somewhere else. Nope. Anyway, vary by tradition, location, which book you look at, and what your grandmother called them. So, but today we're going to be all talking about Asteraceae or Compositae, and I don't use the word Compositae much. So Asteraceae is the family name that I've always used. This sunflower is the common sunflower. It's the Helianthus annuus. I can't even pronounce them. And then many of them have complicated or more smaller subspecies and varieties. I highly recommend this book, particularly. It helps me kind of dig through descriptions and that don't always make sense. I run to it really easily. So not all yellow flowers are composites. We have the agarita that got fried this last month, primroses that are fixing to come out, dwarf senna, large buttercups, red buds. There are lots of flowers that are yellow. So what makes a composite flower? Composites are flowers made up of clusters of little flowers that look like one big flower. So we have the you have the little flowers in the middle that are called disc flowers, and they have that's the large majority of flowers within a composite flower. And then on the outside you have the ray flowers, and in this picture you can see, and I'm using my little thingy to point, and I don't know whether it works or not. Maybe that does. Anyway, you can see the flower connected to the petal. And then the disc flower is one of these little things that's in the middle. And usually this is where we find the seeds, or with the disc flowers. All right. So how do I go about distinguishing them? I look at the size of the plant and its growth habit. And I'm just trying to figure out how to make all this work for me correctly. I'm getting control of my computer. That's always a challenge. So I look at the size, which tall and upright, like sunflower, bushy, like a golden eye, short and spreading, like the Cretan weed, and simple and short, like the bitterweed. I also look at the leaves. There's several of those. There's a leaf shape. So there's lots of variety in leaf shapes. Leaf size. That tells you a lot of clues about what one is. Leaf color. So sometimes you can just identify them in passing sometimes. Like the golden groundsel. If you turn the leaf over and it has purple on the backside, you know it's the golden groundsel. Then there's leaf texture. And they're either really rough, like the brown-eyed Susan with prickles, or rough, like the golden eye. Then there's the smooth Bidens, which gets its name from what it feels like. Cucumber leaf sunflower, which is almost shiny, it's so slick. And frostweed, which has kind of a matte finish. Then I look at the size of the flower. Here's 4 sizes. The straggler daisy, which is tiny, tiny, like 1/4 of an inch. And then the creeping spot flower, the Alpine Daisy. And then the compass plant is up to 4 inches. Then one of something I discovered a couple of years ago is the back of the flower. And it's very interesting to see the variety of the way the back of the flower looks. The bracts, the filiaries, the tegules, those are all 3 names of the same thing. And so you have very distinctive kinds of backs of flowers. Then I also look at the color of the disc flower. That's the center part of the flower, of the larger flower. So for instance, these two are similar. They're both bitter sneeze weeds. They're both Helium amaranth, but variation amaranth has the golden center, and variation badium has the dark center. And they bloom off pretty much at the same time of the year. Then there's stiff green thread. These are the green threads. They have the two different color centers. The one we have here in Kerr County is the regular green thread, filiform. It has a cousin, a very close cousin, up to the north of here that has a yellow center. Then a look at the shade of the petals, the ray flowers themselves. And so Sleepy Daisy, you can identify driving down the highway because it's the only one I know that has that lemon yellow. And then the Zexminia is going toward the orange. And so it's really, really distinctive, and there's a lot of it around here. Another thing I check is the smell, its fragrance or its odor. So for instance, the camphor weed or the golden aster smells like camphor. And you crush a leaf and you know what you have. It's real distinctive. But this one's also the chocolate flower, the Berlandiera lyrata. I don't know. Anyway, it does smell like chocolate. The flower itself smells like chocolate. It's really impressive. You kind of go, how'd that happen? Another one that has a very distinctive smell, a unique fragrance, is the Wasatch Daisy, and I don't have any way to describe it, but it does. It's unique. Then I look at where and in what kind of soil they grow it. So we have plants that grow out in the field, which we assume has a few inches of dirt at least. Then we have plants that grow on the rocky hillsides. And there's other plants that grow along the riverbank. And they're kind of unique or are specialized in these locations. Oops, wrong button, sorry. Then differentiating the same genus but a different species, we've already looked at a couple of those, but a difference can be seen specifically in the leaves. Here we have two thymophilia. One is Paralania, which we have a lot of around here, and that's a little bitty short plant, maybe all of, 3 or 4 inches tall sometimes, in the tiny flower. But it has kind of a piney looking leaf to it. And you can see that here. This is the Paralania. That's what I get for trying to point. The other one, which is its cousin, is the bristle leaf, prickly leaf. And it has a very distinct little separated leaf. So they look really similar. It's also a short little plant, little yellow flower, but it's distinct leaf. Another thing I look at is growth style. And so the slender, the bitter weeds, you have one that has the leaves only at the base, and the other one has leaves growing up the stem. Both of these will be some of their first, well, on a normal year, the first flowering plants. So this is the very first one I see, and sometimes the little plants actually survive all winter long. I've spotted some as late as December, but as they grow, as they spend more time growing, the leaves grow further up the stems. You notice the back of it? And then its cousin, the slender stem bitterweed, is kind of up on a long stem with the leaves at the base. And it has a different kind of back as well. So there's some that have a similar common name, but they're totally different in genus. So there's dogweed, and I've seen this one here in Kerr County. And then the prickly leaf dogweed, and this I think I've seen a little further west or up further north. The two of them have several possibilities to be similar, but what they have in common is the glands on the flower bud. The flower themselves are a little bit different. The leaves are very different, and the growth habit is very different. So what they have in common, they call it dogweed because they have the glands on their leaves. Then we have some that they're the same genus and the flower looks similar, and so these are the Berlandieras. The leaf, the growth habit, and the back of the flowers are different. So here we have the Texas green eye that has a long entire leaf with lots of little teeth on it. And it's a tall, upright plant, sometimes 3 or 4 feet, have a very distinctive back of the flower. Then the chocolate flower has a very incised leaf. It's fairly short, usually short or spreading. And it has these really neat chocolate veins on the back of the flower petals. Somebody told me that the Texas green eyes have a fragrance too, but I haven't caught it. Then another one that people often get confused and struggle with the identification are the coneflowers. And so these are 3 of the coneflowers we have kind of in this area, some more than others. The brown-eyed Susan, and it's kind of an interesting one because how much of this reddish brown stain close to the disc flowers varies extremely a lot. The plant here doesn't have any at all, and this one has quite a bit. And then the clasping leaf coneflower, which also has that same variation of how much brown is on the flower. But the differences in the leaves and the stems. Brown-eyed Susan is prickly, has lots of prickles on the leaves and on the stem, and the stem is fluted, whereas clasping coneflower is very smooth, has a smooth round stem, and you can see how the leaf hugs the stem. And some people that are new to the area confuse this one because some people call it the prairie coneflower, but it doesn't have much in common with the others except for the cone. And we know it all too well around here because there's a lot of Mexican hats around here. Sunflowers look alike and have the same genus, but the leaves are distinctive part, as well as location. So here's the common sunflower again. And here's the cucumber leaf sunflower, which you can see the different growth habit because it has the plant down below and it sends up a stalk and has the flowers on the end of the stalk. And then the Maximilian sunflower is another we're very familiar with around here. We all look forward to seeing it in the late summer. And so it's the leaves. You can see the difference in the leaf and the way they show up. rosinweeds or silphiums are very interesting flower that I've enjoyed making its acquaintance. You can see they have interesting filiaries. It's one of the, and they're a little bit different from everything else. But they have certain things that are different, like for instance, location. The compass plant likes to grow on the rocky soil, and it's much more spiky. The filiaries come to a point. The silphium, the rosinweed, the first place I ever saw it was between the I-10 going toward San Antonio. And it mostly has its leaves down at the bottom and sends up these yellow sunflowery looking flowers. And then the Simpson's rosinweed tends to have the flowers up at the tip, but leaves all the way to the top. So you can see the difference in the leaves and their shapes. And so that's a good way to distinguish between those three. So, but what do they have in similar? Well, something they have similar that's very unique to the silphiums is this disc flowers. They're tubular, they stick out further from the base, and they have long, elongated styles. The compass plant is really extreme right there on that one. But it seems that this is real common with all the silphiums. This gives you a little bit of contrast. Here's the silphium up here, and then this is the Maximilian sunflower. And just looking at the flower itself, it doesn't look that different. But looking up close, you can see that the Maximilian sunflower does not have the long tubes. And it also has the, what is that? I forget what those things are. They curl at the end, that they separate, there's two of them, and they curl back and forth. And these just have one coming out. Don't you love my not knowing the words? And then another genus is the Grundalia. And its difference is the filiaries. So we have curly top gumweed, fall gumweed, and sawleaf gumweed. And the curly top, you can see how the filiaries curl down as it opens up. When it's open, it has these, they curl down. The fall gumweed has their filiaries stick straight up and out. And the sawleaf gumweed has flat filiaries. So that's a good way to distinguish between at least those three of a few other species that occur around here. Oops. There's a closer up look of them. The sawleaf, the curly top, and the fall. And there's just larger pictures of each of those. The curly top doesn't tend to have ray flowers. Tends to just have disc flowers. And then the fall gumweed and the sawleaf daisy. So this is and I'll make a disclaimer here. I'm not, as you probably have noticed, I'm not sticking to those that are just native to Texas. I've included a lot of the non-natives because we see them a lot and they get confusing. This is a batch of flowers that all look similar, but they differ in genus. Almost all of them have a different genus. And they vary in size from 1/2 inch to 3 inches, 3 or 4 inches. So this is a native dwarf dandelion. And this is another native. This is the Virginia dwarf dandelion. You can see that they're just a little bit different how the flowers put together. Then we have our Texas false dandelion, and it gets confused with real dandelions a lot. It has more of the lemon, it's that lemony color too. And then the giant Texas dandelion, I've only seen once up toward the other side of Mason. Then there's the sow thistle, which we all know. I look for the little black speckles in the middle of the flower is one of the signs. I guess those are glands of some sort. And then Cretan weed is another very invasive, non-native, but I found it very interesting. Notice the little black or dark brown fringe on the tips of the petals. I thought it was very unique. It took me a long time to find somebody to tell me what it was. And then our common dandelion. And goat's beard, another invasive, non-native. I just want to say that common dandelions are one of my favorite flowers because they're the ones that people allow children to pick without complaining, and children can really learn to enjoy plants. Then we have the same genus, but different growth of the bushes. So these two, the skeleton leaf goldeneye and the regular goldeneye. The leaf is the difference. We have, and I think the skeleton leaf goldeneye, although people have it around here, is not really native to this area. I think it's more from further west. So the goldeneye grows in clumps. Don't know. I don't think it's just one plant. I think it's several plants in a clump. And then the skeleton leaf is usually one plant, one with a woody center. This flower was unknown to me, but this is one of the advantages of being able to see different parts of a plant. It had something that looked like something of which I was very familiar. So I went home and got my books and looked it up, and I found out that yes, it is kin to our square bud daisy, which we have a lot of around here in Kerr County and throughout the hill country. And it's called the showy nerve way, but it's another Tetragona theca. And so it's the bud, 4 parts, and the way they open up and hold the ray flowers. Tetragona theca is interesting because the bud is in 4. They also do everything divided by 2 or 4 down the whole stem. So anyway, it's exciting when you learn little bits about a plant to be able to find new ones. I just threw this in. This is interesting. This is a non-composite flower that has a similar looking foliary, but you may recognize it as spreading sedum. The genus Thelosperma has foliaries in 2 series, and I guess that's one of its major distinctives. This is the green thread, and then there's a cousin called the stiff green thread, and then the rayless green thread, and Navajo tea. Now the 2 that we have around here are the green thread and the Navajo tea. So green thread is when it blooms, starts in the spring, and often we have it all year long. It's a beautiful plant we have. The Navajo tea, we have a lot of it, and it blooms a lot, but it's it's doesn't make the solid fields like the green thread does. So here's the north of the hill country, the intermediate medium, which has the yellow center, and its filiaries curl up instead of sticking straight out. And then the rayless green thread further west, and it has the two levels of filiaries, whatever, but no ray flowers. So both the green thread is often confused with this other genus because of it does large fields in the spring and late spring. So we have the regular green thread and its bloom, and it's got the dark center, and you go, aha, that's the secret. And yet here's another one that does fields of yellow with a dark, and it has a dark center, but it's the Basin sneezeweed. So how do you know, when you're driving down the road and you just stop and grab a flower, how do you tell the difference? You do it by looking at the back. Remember, green thread has the 2-layer filiaries, and Basin sneezeweed has 1 layer, and they're kind of all curly. really distinctive back of the flower. Sometimes you can go by what season it is. So we have Helium that occurs in all 4 seasons of the year, or 3 seasons, I guess, because not much, well, around here, even some in the winter, but so we've already talked about the Basin sneezeweed and its first cousin, the bitter sneezeweed, which are the yellow and the yellow with brown. And then in the summer, there's one called just sneezeweed. And one of its primary characteristics are the wings on the stem. So they're simple plants in a sense with a few flowers at the top, but they have the stem that has wings on it. And then this one that's called showy sneezeweed, and it also has wings on the stems down below, but it has very tiny flowers. I don't know why it's called showy, maybe where it got named at, that showed up more than the others. And then in the fall, there's the fall sneezeweed, and it blooms in very moist places next on riverbanks and down in ditches. It also has wings on its stem, but they're not, but it's more like more bushy. So another one that occurs through 3 seasons is one of my favorites, the Alpine Daisy, and it's one of my favorites because it's what I have the most of here at my house. And it blooms, I love the yellow, and it blooms 3 seasons of the year. I threw this in because I thought this was very interesting. This was last summer at the end of, in the middle of August. We hadn't had rain for at least 4 weeks, if not longer than that. And so all the plants, and I have a big field full of them, were all looking pretty dead, and they'd gone to seed and done their whole thing. Okay, a week later, 5 days after it rained, this is what I had. The same plant. It rolled out its leaves, started getting ready to bloom again. It started blooming again, but it kept growing, and by September it was gorgeous. So it's one of my favorites. It has a fall cousin, which is the Lindheimer's crown beard, which are the leaves are like sandpaper, and and a much larger flower, but it's not as prolific. And you might know its cousin, the white version, which is the frostweed, which grows a lot around here and has this cool ice formation at the base when there freezes. And last but not least, the fall favorite of the goldenrods. And the distinction I've found the easiest to understand is looking at its leaves and where it grows. We have tall goldenrod, which grows up on the hills. I saw this up on the side of I-10. So it's not down in the ditch or close to water particularly, but it has very upright standing form. And then its cousin, the giant goldenrod, which is always down by the creek or by the river or the lake with its feet almost in the water, sometimes in the water. It has kind of grayish looking leaves, and the stem has velvet, so it looks kind of blue-green. And it's a lot. These two are the very tall ones. Then there's the prairie goldenrod, which is one that's can be, maybe anywhere from 12 to 24 inches tall, and grows on the hillsides and up on the side of the rocks. And it has these multiple leaves on the stems a lot of times. Then there's the downy goldenrod, which I got this from the butterfly garden, but it has very distinctive leaves, you can see. Here's one of the 4 kinds of leaves on the same page. Oh, the giant goldenrod, that's leaves hang down, and the altissimas, the tall ones, they go up. That's interesting. So in review, these are the things I look at. I look for the size of the plant and the growth habit, the leaves, their shape, their size, their color, their texture, the size of the flower, the back side of the flower, the color of the center disc flowers, the shade of yellow of the ray flowers, the smell or fragrance that they may have, location, 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 and the season that they bloom in. And that's, I've got a few more pictures of some scattered DYCs that we have in our area. But those are the basic things I look at when I'm trying to identify. And after a while, you just kind of get so that they're just there. Or I have the vision in my head of what they are and where I might find them in my lists of plants. Anyway, I appreciate you getting a chance to share with you guys again. And I hope that that spring will prove more generous than this freeze has given the fears of. I think bluebonnets might be surprising us because they won't have any competition. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Marilyn. I really appreciate that. I have a whole new appreciation for all the yellow flowers out there. I just didn't realize all of the variety, and I'm really going to be looking for some of those square buds. I thought those were really pretty, really interesting. If you have questions, please put them in the chat. If you haven't already, Sandra, you want to unmute yourself and put your video back up there?
Here I am.
Okay. Do we still have more slides to look at, or?
No, that's all.
That's the last one?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. I guess
I'll take off.
this is the first time I do it, yeah. trying to figure out
Yes,
is the bar
Marilyn,
is covering up.
it was super, and thank you so much for doing this. We've really appreciated both of your presentations for us.
And thank you.
It's just, it'll make me look at these flowers more closely and investigate the backs of them.
Yeah, people get so frustrated with them, and you know, I think that you just learn a few tricks.
Sorry. There we go. That's better.
Are there any other questions? Let's see. Someone has said that it was wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, please put your questions in. I would love to go on a field trip with Marilyn.
Yes, maybe we could arrange that. What was the name of that book? You said it was called Plant Identification? That
Oh,
you
the
used-
terminology. Yes, it's called Plant Identification Terminology, an illustrated glossary. So it has pictures with flowers, and they draw drawings of each of their terminologies.
Oh,
So it really helps it, you know, kind of somebody that's visual like me, kind of really makes a difference.
yes, I need the pictures.
And the author of the book is who?
Oh, it's James Harris and Melinda Harris.
Okay, we have a couple of questions up here. What flowers, yellow or otherwise, should we be looking for first this spring?
It's a crazy year. There were things blooming in December that were not supposed to be there. And so it's really hard to say what will be. And I live up in the hills, and so our flower season's a little bit different. But I think the first things you see are some of the weeds, the henbit and the pinflower, and the little purple things. They're often the first things that show up, trying to get their bloom in soon. But we already lost. We had the algerita, but they're gone. At least up here, people are showing pictures of elbow bush, and they have been blooming. If you know what they are, or you might look them up. It's a small bush that has interesting flowers at this time of year. And let's see, the anemones, the 10-petal anemone, they bloom purple and white and blue and pink. And they come up in the daytime when the sun's shining, and close up and then open up the next day. Only about 3 inches tall usually. And there I've seen several of those out already. And the slender heminox, the slender leaf, the little yellow flower, there's been a couple of those, but most of those aren't, at least in my part of the hill country, aren't blooming yet. So I'm about 2,000 feet, and Kerrville's like at, I don't know, what is it, 12,000, 1,200. And so there's a lot of height difference from where I live to where a lot of people do. So I'm not sure what's blooming down there.
That's where I am today. And I just found one tiny, tiny little white flower today. It's the first I've seen anything. So.
Somebody said, have you ever? I've never germinated anything. I collected seeds at one time or another, and I'm not good at growing things from seeds. If I get a plant, I go buy a whole one and put it in the ground. I'm looking forward to the plant sale.
Okay, any other questions?
One of the interesting things to do is to find you a plant that you don't know what is and stake it out and then watch it through its stages. And so, because a lot of people say, oh, well, what's this little bitty baby plant? Well, wait, go back and look at it again. That's how you learn what they do and how they grow. There's a lot of, another little yellow flower, white flower that's supposed to be blooming right now is called Whitlow's grass.
Oh,
And it's drabba, and they're little bitty things. They can only be about 2 inches tall and be blooming, or they can get a little bit bigger. But I don't know how they survived the freeze. They didn't do too good up here.
I haven't seen much of anything since that. And I was really disappointed about the agarita.
Oh, you have to walk around staring at the ground.
Yeah, that's about it.
the thing in my garden that did well was the garlic. It all flopped over and then all of a sudden it perked up again. And that was about the only thing. And one rose is doing really well and the rest of them look a little bedraggled.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, but I'll have to look closer to the ground.
Yeah, my Mexican oregano looks fried,
Oh,
and it usually survives everything.
well, it was such a lengthy freeze. I think that's really what did things in.
We're glad that the people survived.
Yes.